This is BS on Broadcasting. David Brody, a former national radio host and talent coach with 4 decades in the industry.
You gotta understand what the score is and where you are in the game.
And Marc Serber, a commentator who's called and hosted soccer matches for leagues and competitions around the world.
Real panic defending from DC United and continues here. And the beat is finally beaten. It's the opening goal for Chivas USA.
Together, they're on a mission to help every broadcaster be their best by learning from the best. And always talking BS. Brody, Serber on Broadcasting.
Welcome to BS on Broadcasting. I'm Marc Serber alongside my colleagues Shawn Medow and David Brody. And our mission here at BS on Broadcasting is to help all sports broadcasters be their best by learning from the best. And our first 2 episodes, we've had some of the best talent in the country, but today we're very excited to be joined by one of the best and top level producers in the country, and Jason Wormser. So Jason, thank you so much for joining us here at BS on Broadcasting. And first of all, could you just let everybody know a little bit about your journey and how you got into production, as well as where it's taken you?
Well, nice to join you guys. Appreciate the invite. So my production journey is interesting. It really started in high school. I grew up in South Florida, went to high school in South Florida, and I was always a news junkie, a television junkie, even when I was a small kid. And I wrote the news director at the NBC affiliate in Miami at the time. And they were the lowest rated station. Nobody watched them. It was just awful looking. And I wrote him and I said, "Hi, I know sports. I know everything about sports. You're the lowest rated station in town, and I work for free." And he called me back, and I went down to the station, and he hired me. He hired me to be an intern, unpaid. And that was, I think, my senior year in high school. And then I worked on summers before college, and then during college when I came home. During the summers, I also worked in the winters when I came back from winter break. And I did everything from pulling scripts, learned how to edit, went out with the reporters, log tape, did B-roll. They actually let me, one time, they let me in the scrum with Don Shula. And Don Shula had this really unique way of doing the media. He was a master of it. So it was electronic media first, and then the writers second. Electronic media, radio, TV, right? So we asked our questions. He was always firm and honest and pretty good with us. And I jumped in there and asked a couple of questions. I'm pretty shook up. You're 18 years old, 17 years old doing this. And once in a while, they'd let me jump in and do it. And then I would notice on the side, he'd go to the writers. Now, the writers were not allowed to have any tape recorder. And so it was all shorthand. And so he could control, because the power was still in the newspapers. We had 4 tremendous newspapers in South Florida covering the team: the Herald, the Miami News, the Sun Sentinel, the Fort Lauderdale, and the Palm Beach Post. All had tremendous writers, great columnists, legendary places to work. And I actually did work I was a stringer for the Sun Sentinel and the Herald in high school. And I also worked later as a part-timer out of college with the Herald. And he had control over the situation. So if there was some quote misquoted, he could go down their neck, right? So he was a master of it. So that got me kind of the first baseline. I went to NYU, broadcast journalism major, was on the radio side, went to the radio station, did basketball. Kenny Albert was one of my cohorts. Rich Ackerman, who's on CBS Sports in New York. Steve Cangelosi was 2 years older than me, 3 years older than me. He was the sports director when I was a freshman. He covers the Devils and also New York Red Bull for MSG in New York. So we had this real powerhouse there. And that was a great opportunity to do sportscasts, to do games, to do radio talk show in New York City. This is before Mike and the Mad Dog and WFAN, believe it or not. So, and when I got out of school, again, went to the Herald, was an agate clerk. So I did all the box scores and things like that. And the horse racing charts, the parimutuel wagering charts and things like that. It was just great. You work with the editors and just saw how the process worked. And I didn't want to be a writer, even though I was writing. I didn't want to be in that. I wanted to be in television, or I wanted to be on radio. Really, I wanted to be on radio broadcasting. And it was about a year plus from leaving college, and I'm like, I need to find real full-time work. I had a couple of opportunities on the radio side, but I knew about this program at ESPN, production assistant program. A friend of mine from college had a friend he went to high school with, was in the program at ESPN. And he came into 411. I applied. I don't even know if I applied. I just sent Al Jaffe. So Al Jaffe hired everybody at ESPN, production kids, producers, talent. He hired, you had to go through the Al Jaffe wall. And so I got a couple of tips on the interview. I actually still don't understand, because hundreds, they probably had 500 resumes, 1,000 resumes. Picked mine out. I also spent, when I was at NYU, I worked at Westwood One, which people know they do the football, they do March Madness, a whole bunch of other things, but I worked in their sales office in New York. And I used to make tapes and things like that. And we used to be a gopher and run around. So I had all these connections. I was an intern at NBC Sports in production my senior year, my entire senior year. So I had this big resume that a lot of kids didn't have. And I think that's the reason why I gave me a shot. Took the test and I blew them away, and I got a job. I was one of 32 people at ESPN, one of 32 production assistants. Now they have about 250 or so, but I was the 32nd one back then. And a lot of those people are still there to this day. A lot of those people are running that place. Norby Williamson, who runs production, basically the number one in production, and reports to Jimmy Pitaro. He was my highlight supervisor. Dan Steer, who did a whole bunch of things at ESPN, was the number 2 at NBC Sports until recently. He was my highlight supervisor. And that's kind of how it all went. And so at the same time, I still wanted to be on air. I was a little young enough, willing to go to Dubuque or wherever. In 1990, I went to the winter baseball meetings in Los Angeles, which is a very interesting, I'm sure it's still interesting 30 years later, and got 2 interviews with minor league teams for play-by-play jobs. Didn't get either one. One was nepotism. The other one, I was a finalist, and they just decided to pick somebody else. And that gave me some impetus. But as ESPN kind of went on, I got more and more opportunities, and I was given plays of the day or plays of the week. The plays of the week back then were not much, and I kind of did my own thing with it. And I kind of got some ruffles going, some things. I was ruffling some, the waters were churning there. And then they promoted me to associate producer, and I got some opportunities to do some unique pieces. And that turned into College Game Day. This is before College Game Day is what it is now, which is this humongous behemoth. We were the first group to go on the road. This was 1993, Florida State, Notre Dame. And I was a feature producer. And I knew we begged, borrowed, and dealed on that one. We were begging them to go to that game because the ratings weren't good. They were going to cancel the show. They really were. They were getting pretty close because there was no traction. So working with all those great people, I found my way, and I kept moving up. I was high soup. I went later to high soup, highlight supervisor, and then saw an ad, and we had these old bulletin boards at ESPN, and there was a job for the bureau producer in Dallas, first time ever for a bureau producer. And I work with these guys and gals because we take their feeds in, we talk to them all the time. And it always fascinated me. And I didn't want to live the rest of my 20s in Bristol, Connecticut. So one late night after being done at about 2:00 in the morning, I ripped down, I saw the ads on all these bulletin boards. I went to every one of them. So there's a couple of them on the production there was 2 buildings back then, ESPN. Now it's 100. Wherever they were, I took all of them down. I ripped them down, went into Jim Cohen's office, who was the senior coordinating producer for the bureaus. And I just put him on his table. I go, "You found your man." And he was stunned. And I go, "I want to do this. I want to get out of here. Like, I need to get out of Bristol." And because I had a taste of it on being on the road as a feature producer at College Game Day. And I go, "I got more to do. There's more for me to go to figure out." And that kind of started that path. I got the job. I went to Dallas, knew nobody, but got connected. And I got there in the fall of '94. So a very interesting time in Dallas, right? Really, they get towards the end of it was Jerry and Jimmy that broke up. So I was there for Barra. We call him Barra, B-A-R-R-A, not Barry Switzer with a Y. It was Barra and Jara. And it was incredible. It was an incredible time to be in Dallas with that team, the power of that team. They were like covering the Yankees. They were like covering the White House. And so so you keep moving up, and then that turned into old friend Scott Ackerson went to Fox, started Fox NFL Sunday. We met in '96, we had dinner the week of the NFC Championship game. He says, "Hey, we're going to get baseball. Do you want to come?" That's how the stuff goes. And that, now you're going to work in Los Angeles and live in Los Angeles and work for a network. And ESPN didn't have the power back then that they have today. And now you're a primary rights holder. So now you're working on the World Series, you're working on the Super Bowl. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And so that turns into, you just keep moving along. And that turned into an opportunity at the NFL Network. And that turned into, to starting at something brand new in 2003, working at the NFL with Steve Bornstein, who was the president of ESPN, and that crew with tremendous people. And that turns into opportunities. And ESPN Connection, they reached out to me in 2009 about the World Cup, and I had a job, and I didn't solicit it, but they reached out to me, and they said, we want to hire you. Because I always wrote those guys. I stayed in touch with the ESPN guys and sent them notes over the years about their soccer coverage. And they were really getting into it. And I said, here's some ways to improve, and stayed in touch, only friendly. It was never negative. It was always a friendly thing. And 2009, they reached out to me that summer, and they said, we want you to come with us. And, they went to my bosses around me. I didn't solicit it. And it was a great experience. 50 days in South Africa for the World Cup. Incredible experience. And 3 months later, I got a cold call from HR at Fox Sports to get the vice president production job for Fox Soccer. And that's kind of how it goes. It kind of continually builds. So did I ever not want to be on radio again? Of course not. I love the game. I love radio, and I've loved broadcasting, but your trajectory goes a certain way. And it's like, you just keep going. You keep rolling because you don't know where it's going to go. I don't regret the forks. There's forks. Everyone's got them. You got to take them and not regret it. So that's kind of my recommendation. It's like, you're going to get opportunities. Everyone's going to get those chances. You got to figure out which side of the fork, which fork of the road you're going to take it and go. And don't regret it. Just do it. Just do your best at it and see where it takes you.
It's so funny because one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight is kind of how the industry is changing and how young sports broadcasters kind of need to navigate those changes. But the one thing is that, the the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I think every single one of us will say that, yeah, if you're going to get started in this business, you have to work for free. Nobody is going to pay you right away to go on air. And I think that, that's just one of those things starting out is you're going to have to work for free no matter what.
Well, I think technology's changed that, frankly. YouTube has changed that. If you are a voice and you create your own content, you become very popular and you have all these followers, they're going to pay you. So you may not work for a traditional broadcaster, but there is what's traditional anymore. So I agree. You got to pay your dues and all that, but you do and you don't. People are on the air now that just did YouTube and somebody saw them. Talent offices at networks saw what they brought and they figured, well, we can bring them in. They get something there and we'll coach them up and they'll be fine. So it's kind of changed a little bit. Now, are you going to get paid a lot? No, probably not. But I think it's different. I think it's much different. When we started, when David and I started, there was really only a couple of ways of getting in, right? It was, you might get a break locally in your hometown, or you got to go to Dubuque, right? Or you want to be on television, you're working in 150th market in Missoula. That's the way it kind of worked. There were very few prodigies. There were very few Bob Costases, very few Mike Tiricos. I worked with Mike when he first came to ESPN. It was maybe a year out of Syracuse, but he was doing local. He was at WAER in Syracuse doing Orange games, but he was also doing the sports reports at the local affiliate in the junior and senior year. So there are prodigies and there's the rest of us, right, who want to do it. And you just kind of build your own way. But I don't think it's a low paying prospect. And this is a bigger issue within the sports business world. I think everybody wants to work for teams. Everyone wants to work for the leagues and they think they can get away with it, but there's a talent drain at these places now. And they know they have to be more competitive because other groups are out there paying more money and more competition and everybody's doing content of some sort, maybe not sports, but of some sort. And if you have these skills to edit, to voiceover, to do different things, to shoot and to produce things, there are jobs out there all over the place starting out. And they have to be more competitive. The sports world needs to be more competitive pricing wise. There are people getting paid. Well, I know there are people getting paid what I got paid 30 years ago right now, starting out. That's not inflation. It needs to match inflation. So everyone kind of they're all worried about talent drain. Well, you're losing talent because it's expensive now. There's inflation now, and they got to be real. If you're asking us to do more with less, then pay the kids, right, to do more. And if you're doing a job for 3 people, then pay a commiserate, to that opportunity. So it's it's an unusual time, but I wouldn't say that people need to work for free. There's in some states you can't anymore. Internships now are going to be paid. Many places, California was one state. Mm-hmm. There's few more people like schmoes like me. Like I'll work for you for nothing, right? But I gained so much out of it. Again, it was just a different time, a way different time.
But I wrote that down, Jason, your line. You're the lowest rated station and I'll work for free. That's a brilliant line. So if we assume that young people can't work for free because of some of the laws that exist, how should a young person amend that line to work today in 2022?
Well, maybe you don't walk in and say you're the lowest rated station, you suck, and I can make you better. But tell them I can make you better, right? Maybe you're not as forthcoming as I was, but you need to go in there with like, with a confidence to say, here are the things I've done. And because of technology, if I'm a station manager or whatever, GM, and there are young people coming in, I want to see your tape. Now everyone's got a tape because of this, right? You don't have it. You're not doing it. Everyone's doing this. So someone's got it. You got a tape of something. You've produced something. So they all have to come in with I've got the goods. And here's the interesting type of content I've produced before. And maybe I can bring this to the station, right? Now, if you want to be on air, if you want to be a reporter, great. If you want to be on the radio, it's the same thing. This thing, you can call games right now. I've got, the Olympics are on tonight, golf's on, basketball's on, hockey's on. You can sit there and just do it on your phone. And then make a link and boom, send it to any radio station in the country. You've got all these new groups like Spalk. These guys from New Zealand started this whole thing, broadcast sports from anywhere around the globe, and getting all these young people an opportunity to do cricket, to do all sorts of unique sports across the globe. So it's just a way different. I can't tell you how many times I had to do those stupid cassette tapes and put them in and send them out and make copies. And it was, and like if you wanted to be on air, you had to make a tape, and then you had to dub it and find a place to dub it. And it was expensive. It was really expensive. That tape was like, some of that tape was like $20 a pop. Now it's a link for free. You could shoot it for free. You don't need a cameraman to do it. I needed a cameraman. I needed to build enough goodwill on my end to have to have my photographer, our photographer at Channel 7, and say, hey, can I do a stand-up here? So I drag, at practice, after practice, I had a bad coat, a bad tie, and I did a stand-up. And then on a Saturday night, or when it was dead, late night, I said, guys, can I do a 5-minute sportscast? I'll take the tapes from the show. And they have the producer stay, the director stay, the tape. I mean, think about it. Now it's like, you can do a broadcast right now, make a phony background. They have those phony backgrounds, and you can do a whole broadcast and show your stuff. It's so much easier for hiring managers than ever before. So there are really no excuses. There's no excuses for young people, none anymore. Not that there was an excuse in our time, but there's no excuse now.
But it was difficult. I remember spending $4 every tape that went out. Mark and Shawn are like, how old are these guys?
I know. We said, right. I had a list of, and then you have to make a photocopy. By the way, there was no there was no printers. I didn't have a printer at home. I had to go to the library and make copies. Like before I would send it out to the post office, I'd go to the library, make a photocopy, right? So I had a copy of the cover letter and the name of the people, whoever that hiring manager was, and a phone number. It was just nuts. It was like, and you had to buy the trades to find out where these opportunities were too. Right. So you had to subscribe to broadcasting and cable and all these. This was a lot of money. I mean, people don't realize it. But because it's easier, that means more people can do it, right? Or have the opportunity to send in. So the competition's harder, yes. And there's pressure on with just society on who you hire, right? And it's a difficult thing for that programming manager, for that GM of a radio television station to hire people. There are social mores and things that are out there right now, and diversity is big, important, and good to have. And all those things have changed. All those things changed the pool. And it's such a larger pool of people for maybe a lot of jobs, but there's so much competition for every job.
One more quick question. You've had so many great jobs. You obviously have unbelievable skill, but I'm sure you're also great at interviewing. Give the young people who are watching this right now some tips, what they absolutely need to be doing during the interviewing process?
Some real simple things. Wherever you're going, if you're going to CBS News and you're getting an interview at CBS News, you better know who the president is. You better know who the leader of the Senate is on both sides, who the leaders are in the House, both sides. You better know the major players internationally. Who is the president of France? Who is the president of Russia? Who is the leader of China? Understand what you're doing. Understand, like, I want to be in the news. I just love news. I love politics. Well, you've got to have knowledge. You better bring your knowledge to the table. We had a quiz at the NFL. So myself and Chris Wirtz, who is one of the brilliant producers there at the NFL Network, we hired people. We hired young people, 25-year-olds, 22-year-olds out of college for production assistant jobs, for AP jobs, associate producer jobs, so second level jobs. And we told them before, when we got them on the phone or whatever, hey, you made it to this round or whatever it was, you're going to have a quiz. That's it. I didn't tell them what's going to be on the quiz, but you're going to have a quiz. We got to give them a ballpark, knowledge of the game, just the quiz. It was just called the quiz. Let me tell you, we had Ivy Leaguers. We had people from the biggest Power 5 schools in the country. We had men and women from the best schools in the country to community colleges, all different types of people, all different shapes and sizes. Did the interview. You could see the sweat. You could see the nerves come through them when it was time for the quiz. Because the quiz separated, it gave us an indication of, do they know anything about the NFL? Do they have any knowledge of what we're doing? We always thought we could teach the television. But if you don't have a passion for the sport or have a knowledge of the sport, you can't work here. You cannot work here. I love football. Who doesn't love football? 100 million people are going to watch the football game on Sunday, the Super Bowl. We all love football. What do you know about football? So we weren't 100%. We didn't bet 1,000. We hired some people who had this incredible knowledge, didn't really know anything about television, and they were super good. We had people who knew everything about both, had a background in some broadcasting, did some production work, had a tape, knew football, but it didn't work because they just didn't fit. They made a lot of mistakes. They did some dumb things. And then we had those who we knew tried really hard on the quiz, but we saw something in them because they were smart. And we think we're going to give, that person didn't do so great on the quiz, but he or she had something. They showed passion. They showed a tenacity and something really, there was something there. And again, it's really personal. It's so personal, that meeting and that interview. So be prepared, know the company, know the group, know something about the people you're being interviewed by is always a good one. Hey, I saw you were at NYU. My cousin went to NYU. It's rapport. Do I want to hire you? Do you fit with us? Are you a good person? Are you going to be fun to join our group? That's so important for young people. Look, I'm in that part right now. I'm on the outside looking in. I've had interviews. Now they're not in person. There's 6 of us in a box looking at each other. And those are really hard. Okay. That's intimidating. That's intimidating for somebody like me who's been in front of people. I'd rather be in front of a group of people in person than 6 box looking at me. And this dumb little blue light. Way different because I can't show myself to them. As good as the technology is, I can't show who I am without being in person. So be prepared, know your company that you're interviewing with, know something about the people you're interviewing with, and ask good questions. Ask good questions. Think about, what's it like at your place? Why is this position open? What's been success? What measures success for this position after 6 months, after a year? Can I build a path to work here beyond a few years? What is advancing here? How do people advance here? We're talking about people in their 20s who are just starting out. These are the questions that I would be asking, because it's a two-way street. You want to work for said company or said broadcaster, do the digging. Go on the LinkedIn. We didn't have the LinkedIn back then. We have the LinkedIn now. Go to see somebody who was at a parallel positioning you're trying to find. Send them a note. Say, hey, I'm interviewing with XY Broadcasting Company. What's it like working there? What do I need to know? How's it been for you? How was your interview? What did you learn in your interview? Get as much intel. Own it. Dominate. As the great Prime would say, prime time, Deion Sanders, dominate. You got to dominate it. And look, again, I'm guilty of it because I say all these things, and I've had some of these interview things online, and I get done and I'm looking at myself going, that was a disaster. But you can't get down on yourself. You got to just pick up and keep moving.
Jason, I wanted to ask you, just similar to what you were talking about. That was more on like interviewing and stuff, but
sure.
Like looking at a broadcaster or even a producer who's young or, still going through it, just what kind of qualities are you looking for? Do you think that people would look for in young up and coming broadcasters, producers, just people in this landscape? Because, people copycat, people look like, how do you differentiate what qualities?
Okay. You said your question was smart for this reason. You said broadcasting and producing. You need to do everything now. Back when I started, if I wanted if you started and worked in Dubuque, you learn how to run a camera. You learn how to edit. You do your own stand-ups and all that stuff. It's similar today in that line. You need to know how to produce content, okay? Whether it's audio or video. You need to have, if you want to be on air, you need to have reps. So you get the reps through all the means that we've been talking about. And you're being yourself. I was lucky. Look, I used to send tapes. I sent tapes to some broadcasters that I knew or knew of in the state of Florida. When I did my tapes, I gave, our reporters and on-air guys at Channel 7, I let them look at it. I said, how can I get better? What do I need to do? I wrote David Steele, who was the voice of the radio voice at the time of the Orlando Magic, because I admired him. I thought he did a great job calling. He used to call Florida Gator football and basketball on the radio, and was just super smooth. It was really good. And I sent him my tape. I said, what can I do better? And he gave me an amazing, I think I still have the letter somewhere. And it just gave you great confidence. So reach out to some people. Not everybody's going to reach right back, but if you have some connections and a couple of people, get feedback. Feedback is so important to find your way, but be yourself. I was always me. I didn't try to imitate anybody. I was just me. I think if you're just you find your way. What makes hiring managers connect is your authentic you. Everyone talks about that, but it's true. You're just you. You're not anybody else. You're just you. You're your own. I hate the word brand. You're just you. I'm the worm. I've always been the worm. I've always been that way. And if everybody knows what's coming from me, it's real. It's the truth. I may not be right all the time, but it's real. It's coming right. When you're coming to me, you're going to get it real. And that people love that. I think hiring managers really appreciate that. And confidence. Not, if you want to be on the air, you got to have confidence to be on the air. It's not easy to be on the air. It's not easy to look into a blank television camera and speak coherently, fluently, with poise and confidence. It's hard to do. It takes reps. So that's what I would probably do. It's like you need to have confidence. You need to have skills in production, behind the scenes, understanding behind the scenes and what's in front of the camera. And be able to connect by being your true self. And I think you just got to be, when David and I started, we probably worked with a bunch of assholes. Okay. We did. We worked with some really bad people, really people who were, if it was today, they would be out. They wouldn't be working at 7-Eleven. Okay. They wouldn't be allowed to work at 7-Eleven. Okay. It wouldn't happen because they were genuinely bad people who did a lot of bad things. We need, there's no form of payment for being decent. It doesn't cost any money to be decent and to be a good person and to be likable. And if you're not that, we ain't hiring you. I sure as hell ain't going to hire you. We want to hire people that we liked too. It's a big psychological thing. It's like, it's not just your physical skills and there are soft skills involved, but they're just the likability. Are you likable? And are you likable on air? Right? If you want to be on the air, do you have a good voice, positive voice, powerful voice? If you want to be in radio, you want to do podcasting or audio work, or want to be a producer of podcasts and you want to voice your podcast, you need to build those skills, but you need to have a voice that's inviting to listen to. And the same thing on camera. You can look like me on camera, but if you've got great passion, you can cut through the camera and connect with that viewer. Doesn't matter if you're bald or ugly, you've got the goods because you've got a way to connect and communicate. That's what we look for. It's not, everybody's different. There's no one way. There's no like, hey, this hiring manager is the same as this hiring manager. No, everybody's different. And so how do you cut through that? By being your authentic self.
I think a great example of what Jason just said, all the qualities, the attributes that you just talked about, including the bald head. Got a guy at ESPN who now does the nighttime show by himself, Scott Van Pelt. And back in the day, Jason, a guy like Scott wasn't going to be doing that. Things have changed.
Changed. And Scott and I, we were pals and we worked together. We didn't work together. We had friends. I had a couple of buddies of mine who went to the Golf Channel, worked with him full time, but we worked together at the majors before he went to ESPN. And I remember being at the Open Championship in 2000. He says, I think ESPN is going to come after me. I think I'm going to get a chance to, what do you think? I said, are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? If they're coming after you, you bring it, brother. You show who you are and you take that job. If they offer you that job, you just say thank you to the Golf Channel and say, you got to go. You got to go. And right, he's gangly, tall, bald, freckly guy. But man, does he come through the screen as a powerful communicator, right? With an authentic voice, his style. He is the best. He's so great to watch. I love his shows. I love the format of their shows. He has reinvented SportsCenter in his own unique way for the 21st century. Brilliant. Great example.
And what I love about Scott is the attitude. I wrote a book a number of years ago, and one of the sportscasters that we interviewed for the book was Scott Van Pelt. And we talked about how he went from the Golf Channel to ESPN he didn't have a lot of experience anchoring.
Nope.
And I remember saying to him, all right, so you go to ESPN, and they hired him to basically follow Tiger Woods around. And then they gave him a shot to anchor, and they threw him in. And I remember saying, you must have been scared out of your mind that first night when they said, dude, you're anchoring the show. And he looked at me and he said, actually, I wasn't scared. And I said, how were you not scared? And he said, because I said to myself, what is the worst thing that can happen? I suck. People say, you bald-headed whatever, you suck. He's like, so what? It doesn't
So
matter.
what?
Me being me.
You only got to deal with, you know what? You don't, you know, when it comes to being on air, you see all this stuff on the Twitter and social media. How NBC covered Schifrin, Michaela Schifrin. How, how Tony Romo did in the AFC Championship game. He was kind of all over the place at the end of the game and not really telling us what's going on. You got to block that out, man. Got to block it out. It doesn't matter. Only thing that matters is your peers and your bosses. And if your significant others and your family say, hey, you listen to them and your close friends. Everybody else doesn't matter because they ain't paying your check. They're not writing you that check. So you're there to, you want to connect with your audience. Of course you do. But you want to do it by being fair and honest in yourself. And you're being, you have to kind of knock all that stuff out. He had a great attitude. All those guys were great. The stories of working with Bob Lee, Gary Miller, there's just Chris Berman, all those guys who worked back then. The Patrick brothers, they weren't brothers. Keith Olbermann. They're all humans. Charlie Steiner. They're all humans. And they all react like we react. And the one thing that we had at that place back then was we're all kind of in it together. Yeah, the talent were making a little bit more money than us, but not a hell of a lot more money than us. They weren't rich. Not like they're getting paid today. But it was a team effort. And we had meetings afterwards where talent was in it. So talent would go to a PA and say, hey, next time it was good, but I don't need all that information on, the Flames lead 4-3. Just give me Flames lead 4-3. How much time's left? It was a collaborative effort. No one was higher. There was no hierarchy. It has become a little bit hierarchical as the years have gone on. And it is a community. Those shows, even today, we working at Fox and doing those, getting up early in the morning and doing, whether it's the German league or the Champions League that we had or whatever league we had, it was a community. And we had meetings, we had togetherness, we needed each other. Production needs talent, talent needs production. We need operations, right? It's a big team effort. If we're not all pulling the same rope the same way, it ain't going to work. And so I think people need to realize that. Whether you're talent, you ain't big shot. Some people act that way, but see how those big shot talent end up. See how they end up, some of them. They end up like Matt Lauer. Now he's rich. He's rich. But what is that? At what cost? At what cost? And you should never be that way. And you shouldn't, it's just like, I get it. I mean, the talent, it's so ridiculous. The talent's getting paid a lot of money at the very top end. But they're the very, very top end and they're treated differently and all that. I just read a book, Ira Rosen, longtime producer of 60 Minutes, segment producer. Go read it. Go read the book. I have it on my bookshelf. I can't see it. Oh, Ticking Clock, it's called. Go read it. You want to talk about ego. remember you talking about Morley Safer, Harry Reasoner, Mike Wallace. Holy moly. You read through that and you'd want to, like, if I was a producer, I'd punch the blank out of them, each one of them. Maybe not Ed Bradley, because I like Ed. Rest his soul. But go read that book. And that is an example of how it should not work and how it was. And the power of producers and the importance of producers to get the story, to help finish the story off, to make it good. And look, producers get credits all the time on 60 Minutes. You see that. You know, Richard Dykes does a great job reaching out to producers and technical people and singling them out to say, hey, these people did good work. You should know them. You might know the front-facing people, but it's the behind-the-scenes people that also make this thing really go.
I think that part about relationships is just so important as well. When you were kind of recounting your journey, so much of it was you had great relationships with people, or you knew people really well, and they reached out to you because of it. And that part about being likable and being authentic, I think it's so important to build that rapport, like you said, with everybody from, the head talent all the way down to the last PA there, because, as much as
you don't know when they're going to be your boss.
Business, yeah.
You don't know when that PA is going to be your boss. Norby Williamson was a highlight supervisor. The dude is running ESPN's content. Okay. So, but it was every company's different. Every company's different. And I think, look, and I made mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes over the years. How I made mistakes because the nature of our business, live television, mistakes are made. You got to own up to stuff. There's stuff I didn't own up to. And I would get on someone's case and that person wasn't happy. And I had to go apologize to him. And I said, you know what? I was an idiot. I made that because I didn't do my job the right way. That affected your job and our show. And that's on me. And I felt bad about that. So you're going to make mistakes. Everyone's going to make mistakes. Own up to it. Communicate and leave the door open. Right, Mark? When the door is always open, right? Right? It was closed sometimes, but closed when I had to take a phone call. That door was always open. It wasn't symbolic that the door was open. The door is open because we're a creative team. And so if a young person's cutting an open for a soccer match or a feature or this element or an interview, they may want to say, hey, can you take a look at this? Yeah, let's go look at this. I'll go upstairs. I always made sure I went upstairs to the edit bays, to the guys, because they're editing stuff down. Hey, can I see something? Because they need affirmation too. They need to know, are we going the right way? Sometimes I go, why did you put that shot in there? Hey, maybe we try this shot. Not to be negative. People like to make it better. And always give them a pat on the back because everybody needs feedback. Everybody needs feedback. Talent needs feedback. Worst thing that on any level, you could be national, local, is that if you're on air not knowing what your bosses are thinking, not knowing what your production people are thinking, you need to get feedback on how you're doing. Are you improving? Where can I improve on? And be honest with yourself. Listen to yourself as well. Go back and listen to your tapes. Chick Hearn, to his dying day, listened with his wife, Marge, used to listen to watch back every Lakers game to his dying day. How could I be better? Vin Scully, I'm not sure. I haven't heard the same story about Vin, but Vin was always trying to get better every day. He was like 87 when he was done broadcasting games. Humility is so important in that position. If you're a broadcaster for a team, whether it's a local team, minor league team, or you're Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth doing the Super Bowl, You are the voice for people. You are the reporters for people. It is your responsibility to them. And if Al Michaels, I've heard Al Michaels on about 10 podcasts the last 2 weeks. You can hear the passion in his voice. Like, I'm 77, I'm healthy, I'm strong, I love what I'm doing. I want to keep doing it. He knows he's still throwing 95. Maybe he's not throwing 95, he's throwing 92. But he's hitting the black. He's got a nasty splitter and a nasty slider, and he's still bringing it. And I bet you he looks back at every one of his tapes. He actually said, he goes back, he goes, I watched some of these games back and I go, oi, I didn't do that so well. So even in 50, he's been doing it for 50 years, right? He did the World Series in 72, I think, for NBC, did like 1 inning back then when they used to bring the local broadcasters in. And he still has that passion. So he's 77, he's, 11 Super Bowls. So if you're a local broadcaster for a minor league hockey team, you're the voice for that team. I remember getting letters and calls, NYU games, parents, grandparents, people who have disabilities listen to our games. Maybe they were alumni. And it was important that I got the names right. I screwed up a lot of names when I was in college, calling games. I just screwed them up. Home team, just screwed them up, And you get notes saying that was great, that was not great. Hey, I listen to your games. It's fun to listen to your games. It's you have responsibility. If young broadcasters think that way, that they are the reporter, the eyes and ears for the audience and for their team, right? Their club. That's the perspective you go in to, and then you can be yourself and be free of all the other nonsense, because none of that stuff matters. None of that stuff matters. It's reporting on the game. It's names, it's information, it's being entertaining, it's having fun. And your voice tells us if you're having fun too, as well.
I think that's incredible advice. And I think that notion of, understanding the role that you're stepping into is something that's so important too. And understanding that you have that rapport to build and you have that responsibility to build it as well is just so important, especially for younger broadcasters to kind of understand that when you're coming in, it's not about you. It's not about how much you know, but it's about making sure that you tell the story and you build that connection, whether it's one person watching or 100,000.
And the beauty of sport and calling sport is it's not scripted. You might be doing a minor league hockey game and it might be a grind. You're on the road. You're in a bus for 10 hours. You're in Johnstown, PA. There's 8 feet of snow on the ground. It's 20 below zero. It sucks. Your team sucks. But you just might have an unbelievable game because you don't know. And it is incumbent on you to let the beauty of sport and reporting on the game take you to another place and another level. And that could be your biggest break. When you're covering something that is a guy scores 6 goals in a hockey game and you called him. And that incredible feat gets on the interweb, Al Gore's interweb. And who knows who's listening. So if you say, this is game 65 82, and we are dreadful and we're dreck. And you come to the rink calling that game and you're not giving it your all, you might be missing out on opportunity for you in the future. It's serving the game. It's loving the game. It's just loving the unknown of the game because it's unscripted. It's the beauty of sport. It's the beauty. It's why it's undefeated.
It's
Sport in our culture is undefeated.
Yeah.
Because of-
Yeah. It's truly the only reality TV, sports.
Yeah.
It really
And
is.
we all love movies, and we all love music, and we all love concerts, and we all love going to the theater, going to Broadway. It's brilliant.
Oh,
But it ain't nothing like, who knows what Shaun White's going to do tonight on the pipeline? Who knows if Michaela Schifrin goes down and wins the gold medal tonight? That's the essence of sport, and all these negative Nellies. Oh, NBC was sexist. Meanwhile, the person who's running NBC's coverage, Molly Solomon, is a woman and has covered every winter and summer games that they've owned since 1988, in some form or fashion. I think she knows what she's doing. I think NBC kind of knows what they're doing. Okay. They're reporting on it. She's the most important, probably the most important athlete, one of the 2 or 3 most important athletes for the United States. And she had a really sad 2 events. And she was sitting there for 20 minutes on her behind. She didn't walk off the course. She stayed on the course. What are they supposed to do? What's the world feed directors are supposed to do? She's the best in the world at slalom skiing, and she missed, and she's out. And she's sitting there contemplating. So everyone needs to get off that train and understand the responsibility of the broadcasters to tell the story. If you're unhappy with that story, that's a you problem. That ain't an NBC problem.
let me follow up on that storytelling. And in your bio, I noticed that you are an expert storyteller. And I'm curious to know, for the young broadcaster who is listening right now, your keys to being a great storyteller. And I think we would all agree that in sports broadcasting, whether you're doing play-by-play, you're hosting a show, you have to be a great storyteller. It's a big part of the job.
Curiosity. Are you curious? The best of the best. We think of interviewers, Larry King. Larry King, Houston, hello. His most, I listened to Larry King. He used to do television, Channel 10 in Miami. He did the noon sportscast. He had before he was on Mutual Radio. Nationally, he was on the Big Cat, WKAT in Miami, a big band station, and he used to interview people and he got his way because he was curious. If you're not curious about the subject you're interviewing, what are you doing? Why are you there? You there for the glamour? You there for the Twitter and the Instagram? Hey, I interviewed. Are you asking good questions? Are you thinking about ways to ask questions differently? And I just see, so if young broadcasters who want to do sports want to watch one of the greats or listen to one of the greats of all time, just listen to Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick had an interview today with Deion Sanders. I love Deion. I work with Deion at the NFL Network. He asks such great questions because he's curious. And he knows, because he's done thousands of interviews, where to go, where to zig when everyone's zagging. And that is really important. Yeah, there's certain things you need to ask interviewees. Depends on who it is. If it's the coach and you went for 2 points in the first quarter and you failed at 2 points and you lost the game by a point, you got to ask that question. I understand that. That's different. But if you're going to do a sit-down interview with somebody or do an 8-minute hit and you're doing 3 hours of sports talk in a local net market, you better know what's going on. But be curious, have different angles, do the prep to give yourself, because it frees your mind up. And the second thing, You must listen to your interviewee. Listen to what that person is saying. Follow up. Find a key word, a key phrase, and follow up. You're going to have a conversation now. You're not having a question, answer, look down, question, answer, question, answer. Sometimes you got questions and your topics you need to hit on, and you'll take a look down to make sure I want to make sure I got to ask this person this question. Sure, fine. But you're conducting a conversation. So how do you become conversational? You're comfortable with the material, you're comfortable with the subject. You're not afraid to ask a good question, an important question, a hard-hitting question. If you're coming with it from the right lane. If there's something, Chris Russo, I heard this week on a podcast, he goes, I got Russell Wilson on. I know what I got to ask him. I got to ask him about the Super Bowl, the goal line play when he threw the ball, Malcolm Butler intercepted the ball. I know I have to ask that question. That is not my first question. I'm going to ask him about the team. I'm going to ask him about winning the Super Bowl and beating Denver. And then I'm going to get to it. It's how you form and how you create your path of questioning brings the very best out of the interviewee. And I remember one time I had a chance to interview Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys. And this was in the mid-90s when the Cowboys started making these deals with Nike and Pepsi and Ford and all these other advertisers outside of the purview of the NFL. And some of the teams weren't doing that. They weren't that aggressive. And I told Rich Dalrymple, was the PR guy, can I interview Jerry? We're not going to talk about the Cowboys. We're not going to talk about football. We're not going to talk about it. It's only about this. Just sure. And I was just ready. I was ready. It wasn't combat, because you just press the button, Jerry just goes. Okay. But I wanted to make sure I was prepared enough to be the devil's advocate, to play. He was really on the Browns with the Bengals, who owned the Bengals, and how they weren't really doing anything. It was really, really hot. And I kind of twisted some buttons, I pushed some buttons, and it was on. It was on. But at the end, he says, slap me, he goes, that was a great time. I enjoyed that. And I want to make sure you get that part in when I got after the Bengals. And that is because, and I wasn't fearful of the guy. He's just another guy. He's a guy. He's obviously a powerful guy because he owns the Cowboys and all that. But you do it by breaking ice. It brings your nerves down. It brings their nerves down, possibly. There's a comfort level. It's all about comfort level. To bring the very best out of people is, and you're not going to get 100%. You're not. Some people are just horseshit interviews. They just are. And even the very best can't get it out of them. But if you're preparing and you're putting the time into it, more often than not, you're going to get what you want and you're going to get a great interview.
Yep. And not a good idea to start the interview with the hardest hitting question that you have in your pocket. That's going to piss the guy off, and it's going to be a show. There's no doubt in my mind. I had a boss, Jason, who used to say, okay, so you're ready to do the interview. I want you to just take 10 minutes and just think in your mind, visualize how you're going to weave your way through the interview. And a few years ago, one of my clients was covering a boxing match, and he interviewed Lennox Lewis. And at the end of the interview, I said to my client, what was the one question you didn't ask? And he thought for a second. He's like, I don't know. I think I asked them all. I said, no, you missed one. And it was really important. And you missed it. And you should have thought about this. Did you ever think about asking Lennox who he thought was going to win the fight, what he thought was going to happen in the ring that night. He was covering the fight.
Right.
And my client went, oh, yeah, hadn't thought about that.
Nice.
So that's great advice that this former boss of mine gave me. Just think about it.
Yeah.
You're ready to go. Take 10 minutes and just visualize how you're going to weave through that interview and what has to be asked. You were talking about Russo, the logical question. There are some logical questions that have to be part of the.
You're right. You're 100% right. Yeah. That there's, he's done thousands of interviews over 30 plus years on the radio. And also because he does it live and not a podcast, he's got to be quick on top of his game. How am I going to, yeah, this interview was awesome because it was with Brian Curtis of The Ringer. And he goes, doing the Monday after the Super Bowl is easy. He goes, it's the following Monday when there's nothing going on at 3:05 and I got to fill an hour because I don't have anybody on. I don't have an interview set up. So that's the skill. And that's also the most interesting part. He goes, yeah, there was a President's Day thing. Somebody came out with some rankings of presidents. And on President's Day, I just started going down and doing all the presidents. And Governor Christie calls him up in the middle of the show because he was listening. And they just did a whole thing on presidents, on why this president was good. This one was, and Christie had his own stories about presidents, probably did his own research on it over the years. And he goes, that was like an awesome 15 minutes. That was like, I got out of that day and I was like, this was great. So that's also the beauty of the unknown, the beauty of sport, the beauty of here's 3 hours and how am I going to fill it? And coming up with creative ideas.
I think for us, it's kind of the opposite of not filling, but one of the problems that I'm having as we're, just 3 episodes into this podcast, and actually you're the perfect person to ask about this, but is when you're talking to somebody, and of course, the 4 of us, this is our passion, this is what we love. We could probably go all night. However, when you're in a conversation that could go on and you're coming up upon time, or that, a viewer isn't going to be able to last as long as perhaps you can talk about a topic, is how to naturally end it in the exact opposite way that I'm kind of leaning into it right now. But you're the perfect person to ask about that.
Well, because I have a podcast, I've had reps. And at the very beginning, it was like, ooh, that was kind of awkward. But I've had some really good finishes recently. And it's finding something that is personal with that person. That really that kind of wraps everything together. And when you get to that, when you're interviewing somebody, not you're doing like topic A through topic Z. When you find something, I always try to finish it with either a personal anecdote or a personal note from them. Something that's really gets to their heart. And it's poignant. It might be funny. It might be thoughtful, super thoughtful. Then, I could go, right. I've had guests I could go along and I go, it's also, how am I feeling as an interviewer? Have I squeezed it all out? Am I done? Because usually when I'm doing interviews, I need time afterwards. I need time. You do an hour of interviewing people, 2 hours of interviewing people straight, no commercial breaks. And then obviously you're going to edit the thing down a little bit. You're pretty spent afterwards because you're thinking, you're communicating, you're trying to think, you're trying to listen. You're right. You've got some notes, you've got some bullet points you want to hit. And that takes a lot of energy and focus to do that. So that's what I try to do is I try to find poignancy, funny, personal on their end. They're the interviewee. You want to end it on them. It ain't about you. You want to end it for them. That's always kind of how I try to do it.
Well, and you'll appreciate this, but one of our former colleagues texted me after the last podcast that we did, and said, just so you know, you can never say I have 2 final questions and then add on more questions.
Right.
So
it's called editing.
Yeah. That was on
right.
me.
We've all done that. It's just like, sometimes there are, right. You just want to keep moving on, or just do a pause. Pauses are fine. There is something good. Pauses are your friend. Constant yammering, not your friend. Pauses lets the listener or viewer absorb and get closer. So when I listen to a good podcast interviewee or interviewer, I'm always listening. Am I drawn in, obviously, by their content, what they're asking, and their communication and their vibe with their interviewee? But there's a tempo. They have a tempo for it. And some are really blessed with it and some aren't. So I think that there's some tricks in the interviewing part, which could be very helpful. And silence and pausing is okay.
Now, fortunately, we don't have to worry about a natural ending because Marc said we're going all night with you.
Oh.
So, Shawn, any other questions? Marc?
Well, Shawn, go ahead, and then I will end with my normal few questions that we end every podcast with.
I'm just gonna let us get out of here because men's half pipe is starting up just now,
and because he's the one who has to edit it, so there's that too.
Marc,
calling me out.
Marc, can I ask one question? A little bit unrelated, but I think there are a lot of people who would like to send Jason a tape. A lot of people listening right now, and they're wondering this question: what exactly should I put on that tape? What do you want to see? Jason, what is it that you want to hear?
It really depends. If you're doing play-by-play.
Play-by-play, yeah.
If you're doing play-by-play, television or radio, it depends. You want to have a good run of action. It's not just like highlights. Okay. How are you doing the rudimentary stuff? If you're doing like, if I'm going to hire someone to be the television voice of an NBA team, I'm going to want to watch a full game, not just the snippets. You can send some snippets, right? You can send whatever your dunk call is, whatever your 3-point call is, splash, or whatever funny thing you try to bring up. Fine. If you're doing a sportscast, yeah, you want to see a feature. You want to see interviews. You want to see how they are on camera. You want to see them in the field after a game on camera. You just don't want to see a little 20 seconds here or that. It's like, it can't just be highlights, because we need to see how you react in a full interview, how you do a full interview. So I think it's maybe there's like, here's some clips to get it started. But if I was a hiring manager, I'm going to want to watch more of that person, listen to their game. If they're doing play-by-play, when we hired our talent, it wasn't a snippet. I wanted to see them call a game. I'd watch a whole game or watch all half and just see where they are, how they connected with their commentary partner. Were they succinct? Were they clean? Were they nervous? Were they not nervous? Were they telling me something I didn't know? If they're an analyst. Competence matters. At the end of the day, competence matters. So I think people need to think about that when they're putting their tape together. How competent are you? And are you cutting through the screen?
Great.
All right. So the final few questions to end this off. First question is, obviously knowing what you know now, if you could go back and speak to your NYU self or before then, going on this journey, what advice would you give yourself now?
Prepare better. That was a lesson, especially on air. Prepare better. Just be, not make it as emotional. You're young. You're just starting out. Go, especially talk radio. I was doing talk radio when I was 17. And it was, I used to get after people pretty hard, the callers and that type of thing. And I think the other thing was not, if you wanted to do it, just keep doing it and keep following it up. I just went down a path, again, not regretting it, but probably saying I needed to do it, to say I did it. And if I failed at it, great. Not being able to get that gig with those minor league teams is like follow through on that thing. If you really want to do it, have that experience, good or bad, and move along. But preparation, and I think I've done a better job in my career, my life from that point of being super prepared, having dots crossed, thought about things better. But that's really the one thing I do remember is just being as prepared as possible, be better prepared. So you're clean and you know this stuff cold when you're ready to go broadcast on that broadcast side, for sure. I don't really have any regrets on the production side, frankly. There's no, I've been over. I did radio. I wrote and I worked for a local TV station all by the time I was 17. So I saw every part of media at that point, what media was, and got a pretty good idea of what I was, and what I wanted to do. So I was fortunate in that part, but I think preparation, being a better, more serious preparer would be the one thing I would definitely redo for sure.
And if somebody comes to you and they're a young broadcaster and they say, this is something that I really want to do, something I want to pursue, what's that first piece of advice that you're going to give them?
Well, don't stop. If this is what you want to do, don't stop. Don't stop until someone tells you you can't pay bills or someone tells you you're not good enough. That's kind of the issue. The issue is that you're young people, all of us, we're at the mercy of program managers, general managers, many who have failed being on air, who had dreams of being on the air. So they went to production. I don't look at myself as that way. I just look at myself as I did all these things. I did stuff and I found a path that worked for me. And so you're at the mercy of hiring managers when you want to be on air. So you've got to believe in yourself and you got to have the confidence in yourself. As long as you have that and are willing to work and to do the reps and take constructive criticism and get constructive criticism, I think you'll have your opportunity. You'll get your chance. You'll get your chance to do it.
And you alluded to this earlier, but last thing I wanted was just to give you the opportunity to tell us about your podcast, where we can find it, what's it about, and then also where we can find you, be it social media or elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. It's called the Wormcast, How Sports Media Happens. It is on all the major audio sites, your Apples, your Stitchers, your Spotifys, that type of thing. If you want to reach out to me, I'm on the LinkedIn, Jason Wormser. That's my name. I'm on the Twitter at worm_66, on the Instagram and Facebook, but I don't really care about Instagram and Facebook that much, frankly. And that's how you can get in touch with me. And yeah, the podcast, I try to do it weekly. I might do my own little thing tomorrow. I haven't thought about it, but I'm going to do something post Super Bowl for sure. I try to do it and be consistent and try to keep rolling and keep rolling and keep rolling on it. It's hard to do. You got to book people. And that's a challenge at times, but I like doing it. So that's the podcast. I hope people get a chance to listen to them. I've had 58 episodes, and from people behind the scenes, in front of the camera, some really great people, some really smart people. I've had authors on too, and have a listen. Send some notes to me, because I'm always looking for insight and for people's opinion on how I could be better and how I could serve them better too.
Oh, Jason, I can't thank you enough, not only for coming on tonight, for sharing your career trajectory with us, and for all the incredible advice, but also for, like you said, always having your door open, always allowing me to bring you my tapes. The first thing I did with every single broadcast was I got a recording of it, and I bought it to you, and I bought it to David Brody. And to both of you, I'm forever grateful for that. So thank you very much. And David, where can everyone find you?
David at sportsbroadcastingcoach.com. By the way, guys, we have a long way to go to get to Jason. We're 55 podcasts behind. So I don't think we're going to catch him. Not anytime.
Hopefully we can definitely keep this going. And Shawn, where can we find you as well?
You can find me on Twitter at Shawn Medow. You'll see the spelling in the show notes, and my website, shawnmedow.com.
And again, Jason, thank you so much for your time. It's so wonderful to get to talk to you, and just for all the incredible advice.
Mark, David, Shawn, thank you. It's a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody for joining us here on BS on Broadcasting. Until next time.